conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious. Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up.
Thank you, John Larson. I receive your kind words on behalf of all of our courageous members of the House of Representatives who want the best for the American people. And what we can do that is best for them in the next 24 hours is to pass affordable, accessible health care for all Americans. The best for all Americans is to have 32 million more people to have health insurance in our country. The best for...
Piece of stinking filth.
Shh, say it again, Shali. This is AJ of the InfoWars. Listen to the Shaliak. This is Alex Jones of InfoWars. Listen to Shaliak on the Cold Reality News and Report.
This is the coolest thing I have ever seen.
Well, hello there.
Welcome to Cold Reality Radio here today on the UCY.TV Broadcasting Network. We're going to get started with some of the obvious headlines today, and then my cyber pal and critical thinker, a member of my round table, my what do they call them? The think. What is it? Christ. What do they call it? The think tank, if you will. The think tank. Duh. All right. So the think tank member, Greg, will be joining us about 20 minutes after the hour. And we're going to talk about some pretty fascinating things. He's always thinking outside the box, and he's shared a lot of his information in the past about oil not being a fossil fuel, and nuclear weapons. Do they really work as they're described to work? I know. We think of them as, doomsday. We totally think of them as a doomsday scenario. And, any kind of missile, any kind of bomb will blow things up. But Greg has brought a lot of really, really interesting information to the table. And we're going to talk to him today. We're going to spend about an hour and a half talking with Greg and what he sees, the developments that are going on. Greg used to work on Wall Street, so he had more than his foot in the water. He was, swimming with the sharks, out there. So he's going to talk about what his take is on the landscape. He predicted to me with high confidence that Trump was going to win the election, a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks before the election day. And I was pretty sure that the Clinton machine was going to just pretty much roll over anything in its path, the bulldozer of filth and degeneracy and scum that is the Clinton machine. Now we're seeing it's pretty obvious that Trump is swimming in the swamp. Wasn't going to drain the swamp. He was going to drain out anybody that was against the swamp. We see so many absolute red flags that show that he was really never going to be someone who's going to set the record straight, drain the swamp, stop the endless wars. And I didn't believe that at all. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe that he was going to do any of these things that he said he was going to do, because what do politicians do? They lie. They say what they're going to do. They say they're going to do this. And now, just like any other many politicians or politics, many bloodsuckers, they go back on what they say that they're going to do, and then make some excuse up why they weren't able to accomplish that. Is usually, if they're on the left, then it's the right that stopped them, or if they're on the right, then the left stopped them. Like Hillary's vast right-wing conspiracy that was trying to destroy her and her husband all these years. But it is just nothing more than an elaborate Game of Thrones, if you will. It really is an absolute farce of reality. This movie that's being played for us over and over and over again. Doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter when it is, it's always the same. And there's always the actors and the actresses that participate, that get the spoils, that get the movie roles in Hollywood, because it is one big family. One big family. I don't know what's happening with this. Talking about Microsoft with a gentleman that I met in one of the breakfast corners that I frequent on the weekend, and really a good conversation. Well, as usual, I spoke. I largely, kind of controlled the, well, not control, but largely, it was me speaking a lot of what I know and truth to what I've seen over the years, and I had a good conversation, communicated with a fellow commoner, and he kind of understood. He kind of got it, and a fellow IT person, and understands the monopoly and the despicable nature of Microsoft and their closed source platform, that they can't be trusted. A lot of European countries are moving away. They're going to Linux. They're using Microsoft Office. They're using LibreOffice, which works just as well, and they're training their people in how to use this. Predominantly free. I'm pretty sure. I'm wondering if once they get a server, or they use it in a commercial environment where they have to pay for it. But I don't think that's the case. I think that just have to have people that know how to support and service the Linux servers, the Linux environments. You can create pretty much. I want to say you can pretty much create an environment much like Microsoft's domains, and control workstations and things like that. But the most important thing is that they're using an open source platform, and the closed source information that. Well, Microsoft was always meant to be the monopoly. It was a spinoff of IBM. And, of course, that was when IBM was doing its or being recognized for its monopolistic nature. And so in order for them to break away and make it look like they weren't dominating and basically trying to control the technology of the world, they spawned another company and made it look like they weren't connected, so that they could further dominate. So we're going to talk a little bit about that again today. And how about that royal wedding? The royals with their deception of, these we're marrying commoners. We're marrying commoners, and they are anything but commoners. They're just Game of Thrones style cousins and interconnected families, and so it's a very interesting. Top headline over at the Sludge Report is Abbas hospitalized. A Palestinian leader, I want to say. Sources of PA say Palestinian Authority leader suffering from fever, chest pains, and may have pneumonia. His office says he is following up on ear surgery from last week. Mahmoud Abbas taken to Ramallah Hospital Sunday for the third time in a week. All right. So that's out of the Times of Israel. Of course, the embassy was opened. Did they build it that fast, or was there just a building already there that they just occupied? So they were there. The Kushner boy, and his wife, but no Donald Trump. I don't think Trump was there. Obviously, he's out insulting someone or playing the divide and conquer game so well. He's so good at what he does. Or is he? It's really frightening to see. Like, I have no respect for the office of the presidency because it's a sham. It's always been a sham. Always been a sham, scam. You can't get in there unless you're part of this bloodline. Every one of them, with the exception, plus or minus one or two, related to George Washington and of course, 1776 and all this other hogwash that we hear to the propaganda. This is like 200-plus-year-old propaganda to keep everybody locked in. President's Day. It's just a horrendous joke, and it needs to. They need to propagate this garbage because they have to sell it with a flag and a Bible wrapped together. The church and state never will be a separation of those because you need both of them because they bastardized everything in their favor. And how can you say that a part of a bloodline when Barack Obama was a black man? No, his mother was white, and his father was most likely, Frank Marshall Davis, who shot pornographic. Well, I don't know if there was real hardcore stuff going on, but there was. His mother was involved in with this Frank Marshall Davis, and anyway, how can you say that he's how could he be related to George Washington? Well, his real name was Barry Dunham at birth, and The Dunham family is related to the founders, the actual we the people, not us, not me or you listening, but you might be. But then you have to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt, and you can't, and you need to do all your own genealogical studies, and you have to do it all on your own, because no bar association lawyer or devil, as the Devil's Handbook they wrote years ago about lawyers, and you see, it's almost as if they knew that they knew that they had to create some kind of system of law, and that would be in their favor. So they create the bar association, and you can't be a lawyer unless you pass the bar, and all that other hogwash. So we know that it's a sham scam, and this is how they roll. It says here, Obama's education secretary, of course, a couple more school shootings. In Texas, there were actually 2 armed guards there, I want to say. And I guess it didn't matter. So what do? You turn what is already a prison, and that's what the American school or the education system is nothing but a prison to indoctrinate and turn you into a debt slave. Teach you some math, teach you pig Latin, and send you off into the world to be the debt slave, to be the tax, to be the taxable property of the Crown Corporation, and so turn them into Oz, basically, like the hit show on HBO, Oz. Turned it into, have a dozen, depending on how much square footage there is. I mean, somebody said, who the heck was it? Was watching, and I watch a lot of news outlets. So I was watching Fox News, watching that Greg Gutfeld show, and this one guy was saying there's more security at Fox News than there is in regular school. Okay, so I think that's what we're shooting for, because with Common Core, we haven't heard a lot about Common Core lately. I think I might have heard something this morning or over the last 24 hours, some kind of commercial that said Common Core, and I looked up, but then I wasn't sure I heard what I heard, so then I really couldn't move forward with it. But I'll keep my ears open. Of course, the Common Core, 2 + 2 = 5, and this weird abstract around the corner route to understanding math and all these other different things. Just ridiculous curriculum has been pointed out by any number of people, and of course Bill Gates is behind it. That lovely man. And of course, another Ebola in the Congo breakout. And it's weird. It's almost like when they want to kind of control things, because the last Ebola thing just kind of fizzled out, right? Last one just fizzled out after they sent a number of troops, and of course, Doctors Without Borders, which is another questionable. I mean, I'm sure they must be doing some good, but at the same time, you have to question these organizations that go out to these remote areas. But it always just seems like, and we know that the raping and pillaging of the African continent is a never-ending process. You have to wonder if this is some kind of new agenda, and then they have to use this a breakout of this Ebola virus to kill off the young, much like in Syria when they go in there and they start bombing, and then all the refugees, the young Muslims and different people of different faiths get thrown into Europe and thrown out of Libya, places like that, into Europe, creating this migrant crisis, this clash of civilizations. You wonder if the same thing is happening in Africa, when these outbreaks of disease happen, because it can kill large sums of people that may, be in the way of that may be in the way of process may in the way of progress. So, see what's going on here. Let me see what we got. Let's see if I can bring Greg in. All right, let me reach out. See if that's the one he's on. So now he's not online there. Let's see what's going on here. I don't know if he's online yet. Swear, let me I'll have to reach out to him in some way. I don't see him online. We're going to talk about some things today, and hopefully he's available. Figure out what's going on here. See if he's good to join us. So yeah, you wonder what's going on over in Africa. You know that Northern Africa has been decimated and attacked by the powers that be, and then of course you've got South Africa, where we've had Simon Rush on, where it's possible that his land and many other white South Africaners may lose their lose land. Just somebody walking up saying, "Hey, we're just going to take your land," and are you cool with that? Are you okay with that? All right. All right. So I see Greg there. All right. Message me in Skype, Greg, when you get a chance, and so I can see you online there. And so Africa is been decimated. We've had the Rwandan massacre, which was no doubt another spawned, rekindled. The genocide that came out of that was the people, probably operatives inside of Africa, and the politicians there that are controlled in some way to create the Rwandan, like 1 million people macheting and killing each other, this Tutsi and these two different tribes. So they rekindle these tribal things, these tribal wounds that have happened over the years, and then they cut them back open with rhetoric and things like that. Next thing you know, everything's in upheaval, which is apparently what they want, what they love to do to the people of the African continent. Let's see what's going on All right, there he is. All right, so let me see. See if I can add Greg in here. Hopefully Skype will allow me to do so. Just gonna audio call, create new group. How am I gonna do this? They changed this over and over and over again. They changed the whole process. Add-ins. No, let me do it. It's an incredible chore every time you have to add someone into Skype to add to a conversation. So, create new group. There is no add to group. Greg. Oh, sorry. Don. I don't know if it's going to allow me to do it. Always a chore. Greg's already in there. You can only be connected to only one call at one time. Do you want to hang up the current call and start? No. Now I want to add someone to this call. How hard should this be? Let's see. Yeah, it's not letting me do it at all. It's an absolute, a travesty that this cannot be done. That there is a button here that there is no button that says add to call. Just won't allow you to do it. I think they just fuck with you all the time. They fuck with you in this program. Let's see if I can use the Google machine to try to find out how. There is an update in there. There is a Skype update. Maybe that one will allow. It will allow you to add someone to a conversation on Skype. All right. Sorry for the. I'm surprised that it's not coming up because they listen all the time. Create a new group. Click the new icon. Type the name of the contact you want to add and then select add. Repeat this process for as many contacts as you wish to add to your conversation. This creates your group. All right. I think I might have to hang up to do it. Let's try that. I'm going to add. All right. Now is it not going to let me do it? All right. 3 participants. All right, let me try to hang up, and then I'll recall back in. Hey.
Good morning.
I gotcha. All right, this is exciting. I think I figured out something new. You can't just add anybody anymore just as you're in the call. But you have to create. You have to create the group first.
Oh, I see.
So you create the group. Like I was connected to UCY, and then up in the corner there's a plus. So you click that, and then I added you, and then I added UCY. I hung up and then called, and then that brings all the people that you. But adding someone to the call is like having a bypass surgery and all your fucking molars removed at one time. It's just not a thing anymore for people to. Anyway, good morning.
Morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just kind of going over some of the things that I've kind of crammed into my head over this week. Things that have gone on, talking about the Ebola outbreak in Africa. When it always seems like the last one fizzled out, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so let's see here. The last one fizzled out.
Well, and, you know why they did that this week, don't you?
I'm not really sure, but I mean, it's been going on now for quite some time. With since I think on May 5th they sent people from the World Health Organization out there, so it's been happening for maybe about 4 or 5 weeks. That I've almost every day I'll go and I'll kind of peruse through the Drudge Report just to kind of see, what they're, some of the things that they're reporting on, along with obviously other news platforms. And then, of course, when you see Ebola, and I know that the last time they sent out some American troops or something over there, but then right after that happened, then it just kind of fizzled out.
Mm-hmm.
Fizzled out.
Well, I'll tell you why they came out with the story this week. It was really cover for the fact of what's going on in the bond market. We had a very, very serious problem in the bond market this week, with the yield spread between the 10 and the 30-year bond flattening out to just 12 basis points, which caused pretty much a financial panic around the world, and all the dark pools of money to start going in and buying up the bond market to prop it up by the end of the week. And they even managed to get the yield on the 10-year bond a little bit higher by Friday. But we've been in a bond crisis since December of last year. It's been a pretty much at this point a 6-month ordeal where the Fed or whatever has to go in and buy up and prop up the bond market. And they had a flattening or an inversion of the bond market in Great Britain last week. Now, this is really serious because all the money that they borrow from the future and bring to the present is dependent upon this. Mm-hmm. And if they can't borrow money anymore, or, if they don't fix this issue, I mean, we have all the bonds that were sold in 1988, the 30-year bonds, that come due this September. And Japan bought a massive amount of them back in those days. Okay, particularly after the stock market crash in 1987, to prop up the U.S. economy, because the U.S. economy is, being the strongest economy in the world. If it falls, everybody falls. So everybody around the world came in and swooped in and started buying up a lot of bonds, from 1988, 1999, 1990. To rescue the U.S. economy from its demise at the expense of their own. Like, that's when the Asian currency crisis began. But that's another story we'll go into. Anyway, the bonds those bonds that were purchased in 1988 need to be rolled over. So that means we have to convince the Saudis and the Japanese and everybody who purchased those bonds to please buy another 30-year bond and refinance our debt again. Now, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think they're really worried about? They're worried about them saying, nah, you know what? I think we'll just take our money and we'll go home. Now the Fed's got to pay them off. It's got to pay them back for the bonds plus the interest. So they're going to have to borrow that. So the Fed might be printing up trillions of dollars this fall just to cover the bonds that were, or at least, excuse me, like $700 or $800 billion worth of bonds. $700 or $800 billion to cover the bond spread. Well, so we're we have a lot of economic problems right now. Okay, so the news is used as a means of distracting people from what's really happening. Got to keep the plebes focused on something else. Oh, let's just talk about Ebola in Africa. Like, really? Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
That's even news? I don't know. You know, it's all just it's like we're in this. We are so fucked as a society that we can't even get along without having school shootings anymore. So the government is doing its job to make sure they happen on a regular basis.
Right. I think Clint had a blog post, the importance of these types of events in peacetime or whatever. I forget what it was, but these different shootings, and it's a psychological thing. You look at this kid, and he got the guns from his father in Texas, of course. So there's a multitude of them, and so he was bullied, and so what does he do? He does what he sees on TV. I mean, it's like there's no doubt in my mind that this kid saw these shootings on the TV. How can you not?
Or the video games, but more
right.
Probably if it was even real. All right, and I question all these things that
Well, that's true too, but then
it's not being staged and acted out to look as if it happened and all that stuff. I mean, the Parkview shooting in Florida. I don't care what anybody says to me. That is a completely staged event. Everything from the actors that are going around with the anti-gun movement that that are so polished and spoken, and yet have been linked to other type crisis events around the country as well. It's like, come on already, But maybe they put these little. They put these little.
Yeah.
I think they might do it and then put these little honeypots in there to see if we catch them. They want. I'm almost convinced now that the system wants to be caught for doing these things because they actually gain power from it in a dark occultic way because they create an environment of anger, fear, and anxiety, and people are easily controlled because then it's like, what next are they going to do? And it does put you in a state of fear. Knowing about our system and how it works is very uneasing and unsettling for people. They have a very, very difficult time coming to terms with it. And that means that it makes them very pliable and very, let's say, they become... They become easily subjected to suggestion, all right? Trying to look for the right words for it. And they plant those suggestions in people's minds through, conspiracy radio, through YouTube, through everything. And most people don't even realize, they don't even know that they're promoting the propaganda.
Right.
Because they're doing it quite innocently, because I think this was... We're human beings are messed up, and we talked about this last week. I think what it really comes down to is we are either of nature, or we either live by the rule of nature, which is brutal, or we live under the rules of morality. But we can't have it both ways, and the struggle and the fight now is you've got an ideology, particularly the feminine ideology out there that controls a number of groups, that is about living the most immoral, saying that morality is oppressive, but yet at the same time demands that they be treated morally.
Yeah.
And that's where we've kind of lost our track. Like, you cannot behave immorally and then demand to be treated morally. It's one or the other. If you want to live by the law of nature, if you want to not have any of the moral guidelines guiding you in your life, then accept the fact that once you reach the point of where you are no longer a useful human being, that you're going to die. That somebody's going to come and put a bullet in your head. Because you serve no purpose other than to be a drain on the body. So like every every cell in your body that lives has a life cycle and dies. As soon as it dies, it is expelled. So you need to be expelled. Or you live your life morally, and then you're protected by the moral code. You know, what's it going to be? What's it going to be, Johnny?
Right.
So, and I think as a society, as a culture, we're trying to play that both sides of the fence, and that's where, even in understanding, it's that guy that kind of like brought me around to say, oh man, I was wrong about the Catholic Church. You know, that it actually was the first structured organization based on morality that fought against the one nature, most destructive force in nature, and that is the nature of men and women, and replaced their nature with morality. And for 1,000 years, we had probably the most prosperous. We weren't going through the ups and down cycles of civilizations rising and falling so quickly, because the code of morality, it was the exchange, you know. You behave morally, and you'll be defended by the moral code. And it's pretty common sense when you think about it. But today, and the Catholic Church started to be destroyed, it's not the evil organization we all thought. I was wrong about it. It was designed primarily to...
But are you saying then or now?
No, it's off the charts bad now.
Right.
All right?
Well, I mean, like, if you're trying to set up a society, and again, as I was telling you, I started watching Game of Thrones, and you see how they just handled everything back then with violence. Like I'm to the part now where, what is it? Season 5, and they're, I guess Cersei starts to. She says, "There's this group there, this like religious zealot group."
Yeah, that's when I stopped watching it.
and what happened was that she got her son's wife or the queen thrown into the gulag along with her brother, who was shagging bros, and in buggery. He was performing buggery, and so now and then the cool thing was, well, I don't know, it's because it's the show kind of like moves you around with your emotions, like this person seems to be there's like these good people, and then there's these people that are just awful, but then you find out that the good people are kind of forced inside this system to do what they're supposed to do. Like even the guy that got his the king or Stark, who got his head cut off in the first season, he was a relatively good guy, but when he thought the guy of the Night's Watch was abandoning his post, he cut his head off. And it's like he was sitting there telling him that, like, where are these other guys? No, they killed and cut their heads off, but it didn't even matter. He by procedure, he cut this guy's head off, and then thus at the end of the first season, he lost his head because being royal and being the first, second, and third or fourth in line. In authority are very, very dangerous places to be. So what you're saying is, at some point, the church was
the church established the moral code that everybody had to live by, and it was administered by. At that point, if you're going to use the show as an example, it would be administered by, if you were in England, by the King of England,
right?
Okay, and by the Crown of England. And the most part, what the church did is you could not, as any group of people, come into their community and disrupt, or through immoral behavior try to deceive or disrupt anybody and you would be left alone so long as you weren't doing any harm. It was really do as to others as they would do unto you. So everybody was perfectly fine so long as they weren't trying to behave immorally. And then morality, that it covers a lot of different areas, but predominantly it's don't you do usury, don't use don't pull any type of financial scams, things like that. Don't steal, don't covet. The various, but there are certain groups of people in this world that make their living off of doing that.
Well, I think that you can't really put together a system like that. I mean, with all of the right, all of the right.
You can't put you can never put together
usurped, right? I mean,
you can't put together a perfect system no matter what. I don't care what anybody says, but so. For all of the systems that have been tried, because remember, there have been many, many civilizations, okay, and many structured organizations, religious organizations, in their attempts to try and institute a moral code amongst its civilians. The nature of men and women are just too strong, particularly women. Once society reaches to a certain part, they destroy it. They destroy it from within. And you look at our society today, that's exactly what's happening. It's the rise of feminism is destroying the very role that men have. And what men are doing is they're pulling away. They're not marrying women anymore. They're having less children. Birth rates are down 50% worldwide. All right? The fastest growing segment are single women in their 40s. Women are through college have been deceived into demanding the right to behave immorally right through their youth, and then at the point when they have no use to society, demand to be treated morally through a moral code. It doesn't work. It's one or the other. So the Rubicon moment has come. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. Right? So society is going to continue to degrade and degrade simply because the abuse of men has now been institutionalized. Look what family court is doing to men, destroying them financially, professionally, emotionally, every aspect of their lives. Men's suicide rates are through the charts. Women can accuse a man of any crime at any time, and there is no punishment.
Right. And I think Paul Joseph Watson kind of points out, he does a lot of videos, but he also points out and he talks about feminism, and he talks about a lot of the third wave feminism and the things that the real hardcore stuff. He says that, and he points out that there's a lot of men that are committing suicide, the family courts. And the weird thing is that I was watching a video this week of this guy, David Pakman, who does a podcast, and he was interviewing Kelly Jones, which is Alex Jones's ex-wife, and she said that the judge ruled in favor of him to have the kids. How does that happen?
The only way that could possibly happen in the United States of America is if he proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that she's completely an incoherent drug addict, that she has a destructive, that she would have abusive to the children, and have it actually physical proof of that. Otherwise, no way. Then I believe the whole thing is, they're just staging that out because the system realized this is the crisis. This is our crisis point that we have. Marriage rate. The future depends upon children being brought into society. The bond market is dependent upon borrowing money from the productive capacity of future generations. If that future generation doesn't exist, guess what? You can't borrow from it. All the projections are a growing population, not a shrinking one.
But a system that depends on borrowing money from people who haven't even been born yet. Mm-hmm. That's pretty destructive and fucked up.
It is. Well, that's what happens when you basically throw out a moral code and bring in a bunch of people to run the show who are the opposite. They live their lives immorally.
Right.
So they bring in usury and all sorts of things and then try to convince people how it's real. Right? Mm-hmm. And that's what we're doing. We're suffering we're suffering in the consequences of losing a spiritual war. And the only defense that we had from that demise was the Catholic Church. Now, I know some people might say, well, what about the other churches? What about the Protestants? What, the Protestants? What about the Southern Baptists? They are part of the immoral movement to destroy the Catholic Church. If you were born again, if you are a Southern Baptist, whatever, I'm sorry to tell you, you are with the immorals. You're with you might think that you're a moral person, but just look within. Most people within the Southern Baptist churches, I don't pick it out Baptist churches. I'm not even picking on people who are religious. A lot of them are just ignorant. They don't know that they've become deceived, okay, by the evildoers, right? And so now they're doing the bidding of the very people that are destroying the thing that's protecting you. And you don't even realize it. Because you say, oh my God, Jesus loves me, Jesus loves me. It's like, our moral code and code of ethics is better. Well, you really don't have a moral code because you don't apply morality. So people in the church deceive each other, pastors steal from their flocks, they fornicate with their, there's so much deception that goes on within the quote-unquote Christian community. It's just, I think the only thing that holds it together is that people feel like they're part of a club and they want to belong. That's the only thing that holds it together.
I heard this story. It's something that's going on in the city with the church, and there's groups that are coming down on them because the church is upholding these adoptions. That they don't want the children to go to same-sex marriages, right? And then after they said that, they said, well, the church is, or they're struggling between their moral code and their want to do what's right by children. And I almost just shit myself and drove off the road. And I'm like, really? Yes. You're struggling between wanting, trying to stop a kid from being raised by two women or two men, and but their need to do what's right by children, even though, there's pedophilia running rampant through all of it, the whole system.
Oh, the system is so corrupted on so many different levels that we need that Christ moment where people say no, and that's what they're deathly afraid of. They're afraid of people actually learning the truth. That will never come from the Protestant churches, because they really don't follow a code. Their whole mission is to break the code of the Catholics, because they are the foot soldiers of the. And this is why we have the big problem in this country today, why we can't end our foreign wars, because we've got 40 million brainwashed morons who believe that Israel or the Jews are the chosen people, when the very God that they're supposed to believe in would never choose one person, one group of people over another, because he can make anyone special. He can make a bag of rocks special if he wanted to. So it's their deception. It's their deception and their creation through their Protestant movement, which began, hundreds of years ago, back in the 1500s with Martin Luther, and by chipping away the structure of the very thing that kept people alive. The very code that actually worked for a long time. Remember, the Catholic Church kept the world relatively, safe from evil for 1,000 years. We're going to go into some really dark days, because, that moral code will not be. It isn't coming from the Baptists. Well, because, as far as they're concerned, Israel can't do any wrong.
Right.
And and it's not to pick on Israel. Look, Jews do not. It's not a religion, number one. It's an ideology, but they have no moral code, so they can do really bad things to other people and be used by, and have been used by people within the church and within other organizations to do their bidding, because they don't have that. Christians have always considered Jews are going to go to hell anyway. Right, so you might as well let them run do the vice, run the numbers, do the usury, whatever, and then they can wash their hands of it, and so certain things happen. All right. Today, when you have tens of millions of people that are basically holding the rest of the population actually holding the entire population of the world hostage to do the biddings of people that have no moral code, where they should just be, I say just leave them alone. I'm talking about Israel. Don't come to their defense. Let them, at this point, basically pull back and say, you guys have created this mess, and it's up to you guys to clean it, but we're not going to shed any more blood for you to do it. And let their system, their banking system, let this entire fiasco, collapse. That would be the moral thing to do, but it's not going to happen. There are too many people depending upon it. There's too many people that want to see it continue. They're not trying to destroy the system. They're doing everything they can every day to keep the system going.
Well, it certainly seems like. I was watching the Max Kaiser program, and he said that everything that Trump is doing is just weakening the dollar even more by the the tariffs and the trade wars.
Mm-hmm. Well, he wants a weaker dollar because that makes U.S. goods more attractive. The concept is the stronger the dollar, the more expensive American goods are overseas. So, and the weaker the dollar, the more you can prop up asset prices, like oil.
Right.
Real estate. Throw in the cheap money to billionaires who can borrow literally for nothing, and then make huge spreads, lending out money to commoners. And there is no economic fix without completely disrupting the system, and people won't be able to handle it. So without a moral code, we're in total pursuit of mammon. It is full speed ahead now, and it never ends well. Now the question is and the $64,000 question is, okay, Trump probably, I would hope that he's aware of all this. As a member of the aristocracy, I'm sure he is. Is he part of the aristocracy that has gotten together and saying, those idiots, those pirates that have been running the show for the last 50 years have gotten away with so much, and they're on the verge of bringing this thing down, and we need to dispatch them and bring more reasoned people into the fold? And Trump is just a means or the catalyst to make that happen? Who knows? We're going to find out by mid-September, because this, or mid-October by the latest, because this QAnon stuff, these posts that are out there all over the internet,
I haven't paid too much attention to it.
I see it. There's a lot of people that are following it. There's a lot of, what makes me nervous about it is it's these Christians are following it. You'll go on YouTube, and some of these people, if you just enter in QAnon, you're going to see 100 videos on it. People are always talking about his RSS feeds or his Twitter feeds, whatever he puts out there. So, and the buzz is, it's kind of like Benjamin Fulford, with the White Dragon Society, that there's going to be that Trump is leading this group of patriots within the government who are trying to take down the deep state from within. And the process of taking it down, well, they have to go through the Department of Justice and Sessions, and there are the indictments that have been done, and they're all sealed indictments, and they're going to take down like the Hillary Clintons and the pedophile groups and all of these things. This is what this whole Q thing has been.
Yeah.
And it's got literally millions of people captivated by it. But then what I see in this whole thing is, okay, is this a Benjamin Fulford line of crap?
Mm-hmm.
Is it just another, like, hey, we're gonna Pied Piper you down another trail, and we're gonna follow just to placate all of these people that know that there's a level of this, the system is becoming unglued. People feel it. They don't have to be told. They see it every day. They see it when they watch the news with the school shootings or whatever. They see it in the behavior of the kids when you see them at Walmart. You see the kids that are 17-year-old, 15 to 17 years old, and you see them in Walmart, and they're all 100 pounds overweight. How the frick did this happen? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the food has been corrupted to such an extent that obesity is off the charts. What, 40%? What do you say? 40% of all young adults below the age of 20 are morbidly obese.
Jordan
Wow.
says that glyphosate, the introduction of glyphosate in the 80s, has a lot to do with obviously the corruption of the food, but then of course the weight gain and people being
right, and they're fat, starving people because the food has been the nutritional value of the food has gone down, the processing level has gone up, the corporatization of America and turning America into a shopping mall rather than a bazaar. We have entrepreneurs, of merchants that that build the society, that build actually an area, a culture, a distinctive area between one state or one city and another city. There was always there were differences because there were distinct cultures in every city.
Yeah.
Today, over the last 30 years, since this corporatization, that is becoming less and less a factor. Every city is almost the same now. In another couple of generations, there'll be absolutely no difference between any city, not just in the United States, but in the entire world.
Yeah.
And it's a head scratcher. That is in itself, that is immoral.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The America being a big shopping mall, is everybody in America thinks that is cool as can be.
One of the best things George Carlin ever said.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
Expose an ad like you think it's just wonderful, mall, and it's just disgusting, and it's a garbage dump. The destruction of nature. They got everybody fooled too with the Agenda 21.
Right.
They got a lot of people fooled with that. A lot of people thought, "Oh my God, they're just going to move everybody into the cities." I don't know about you, but they're destroying nature at an incredible pace. I mean, there will be, there's plenty of open space. Well, this places that might be like out west in desert communities where there's not much value. It's very arid land. Okay, you take the South, right? Florida, Georgia, Carolinas, Mississippi, Alabama. I mean, most people were unaware that there was up until recently there was a tremendous amount of nature down here in these areas.
Yep.
I mean, forests and wilderness. I mean, wildlife, and they're on a. It's almost like they're on a mission to destroy all of it and replace it with suburbs. Why? It makes no sense to me. But it's this whole we have sold our bloodlines, our only real wealth we had, and that is our land. We've become attached to it and replaced it with useless paper. So people are being deceived into thinking it's wealth when it's not.
PJ2K6
Right.
disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you're right with that. I mean, they're saying that they're going to bring everybody into the city. I think that I mean, when you say they fooled everybody, I don't think people are going to be able to live in any other places other than a city because you won't be able to.
No, well, because what they're going to do is, you're going to live in one giant city because they want to turn everything into a city. They want to eliminate all nature. They want to destroy everything that is of God and replace it with the worship of man. All right?
Right.
And so anything, like fields and trees and forests and, natural ecosystems, oh no, we can't have that. Let's replace it with suburbs. We need to be farming humans here, not farming cattle.
Right.
We'll come up with new foods that we can feed humans, right? We'll recycle feces and feed them that. We'll create 3D printers to create artificial meat that they can eat. Or they're going to always do something, but their mission is how do we destroy nature? Because these people are not, these are immoral people. And they are, in essence, they are at war with God. And there's no exit strategy to that. So eventually they're going to lose because, when you cut down trees faster than they regrow, then you get what you deserve, right?
Right.
So that's what's happening. They're going to say, "Oh, we want everybody to move into cities, but we're going to make your cities 300, 400, 500 miles across." Now, which in a sense is so impractical. And first off, the population is decreasing; it's not increasing. The only way they can keep the numbers up is to bring in all the illegal immigrants. Because people just aren't. They've destroyed the family structure, like we talked about earlier, through the family courts. Now, men have finally figured out that you don't even want to get these girls pregnant. So they're just, they're staying away from. So the actual birth rates among single women is really started to fall,
right.
And which is a positive thing because that's the power that the state has. Is based around, women having children, right? The family court structure. So much money. Do you know $70 billion a year is extorted from men in the United States through the family court system? $70 billion. Okay? It's a staggering amount of money.
Right.
I mean, that's how much money the legal system, it supports the court systems, the legal systems. You have how many untold number of men who are sitting in jail because they have been placed as the surety of a bond debt. These states have run financial frauds and placed the and placed the guarantors of the debt onto fathers of child support and alimony payments, and that they use that as the excuse to come and throw people in jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's criminal.
It turns out that I was watching this show. I watched it after someone told me about it, and it was about the truth about the American Revolution. And a lot of these, what are so-called 3%ers, were people that they were largely. If they had, if they owed debts, the 3% of people, they'll have you believe that they just, walked out and met and said, listen, we got to stop the British from this taxation and all this other stuff. Now, they had to, large portions of these people, they had to do things to get them to even fight. And that meant, like, if you were a debtor or if you had any kind of issue, like a legal issue against you, they were like, we're going to throw you in jail unless you fight in this, this revolution.
Right.
So all this stuff, all this information is just largely bullshit. But knowing what, finding out about George Washington and a lot of these other guys. Was it possible? And I always think in such a deformed way because I've been educated and propagandized by the best. That is it possible that George Washington, from the minute that wherever he came from, however he got here, that he had orders to do exactly what he did here, and then he was just like, well, we got to make it look real. We got to make this American Revolution look real. So we've got to get people to actually fight it so that ultimately we can be the victors and then start this American empire or something that's going to replace the British Empire or something like that. I can only imagine that it was like like the moon landing fake type shit, that they were able to do so much to make it look real.
Mm-hmm.
But then, even then, just like today, you've got such slovenly people that you can't get them out of their chairs or off their couches.
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It goes back to that. Of course, that England had, remember, after Cromwell, when Cromwell had brought in the bankers, the Jewish bankers, and it lifted the ban on Jews in England, and predominantly that was the quid pro quo in order to start the Bank of England, because they had run up the debts and they were in default on debts, and they needed to borrow money. They went to they went to the Jewish bankers, they went to the merchants, and said, "You got to help us." And but at that point, the Church of England, i.e., the Catholic Church, had pretty had gained pretty much control and won the hearts and minds of the people. People within the government, however, were a different story. So a lot of bad things were done in their name. Does that sound familiar? And there were people that became corrupted by this, quote unquote, because it all sounded good, right? Because they were offered, what we need to do is to break this system of the church, which was so that we can run our schemes and our usury on a global basis and run the international trade system.
Right.
And that was not being done effectively in that point on a large scale. It was, small scale stuff, but on a large scale with the British Empire. So the United States was a pirate cove. It was always meant to be something outside of the system. It was far enough away from the crown.
And this is before the George Washington 1776.
Right. Yeah, this was long before George Washington was born. This was when the colonies were, and I don't believe what the history books say about the colonies being discovered by Christopher Columbus in 1492. They've been trading. I think the European Scandinavians, the Vikings, were trading with Indian tribes here in North America for thousands of years.
Right.
There's monuments in the Midwest for it, stuff like that, Yeah,
well, it makes sense that that was, I remember, one of the things that they spoke about in elementary school was Christopher Columbus, 1492, and it's bullshit.
Right.
If you were taught it in school, just like when you walk in kindergarten, first grade, and you see that friggin' globe, right? Mm-hmm. It's just all bullshit, right? So, a funny thing they pointed out, I sent this PDF to this guy Drew that works, that we work together, and it was The Earth is Not a Globe by this Samuel Rowbotham, 1881, right? It was a book that they had. They found the book and then they made copies of each page and then they turned it into an electronic document. Mm-hmm. But I sent it to him, and then and he contemplates things. He thinks it's crazy, but he contemplates things because in his mind, he's struggling in his mind to know that, God, like everything seems flat. I mean, this is just so fantastic, right? This is just incredibly fantastic. Like, we're not spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. So your senses deceive you, like that, like the Force, when Vader says, your feelings deceive you, right? Mm-hmm. You must unlearn what you have learned. There's so many of those moments out there in cinema and different things in the world that basically tell you to trust your senses, trust your feelings, and people just don't really pick up on it. But so he sent back to me this picture. It was just like the Flat Earth Society has members all around the globe.
All around the globe.
And at first I didn't even see it. Like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, what's he trying to do? Is he trying to like mock me? Is he trying to shit on me here? And then, said no. He said, read the top line. And I was like, oh, I get it. I see.
Little pun there.
I told him, I said, well, largely the Flat Earth Society is a group of people that shill for actual reality. And then I said the people that, or at least the people that are countering the Flat Earth Society, the Flat Earth Research Society, which is apparently he's been banned, his videos and everything have been banned from YouTube. I forget what his name was, but again, it's just pretty funny that we see these things. We hear these things, 1492. We hear all these different points in time, and it's all just there to 1776, the American Revolution, George Washington, and it's just like this is just all. It's all been
about piracy. It's all been about establishing the Protestant. Remember, the United States was first settled by the Pilgrims, right? Who were the Pilgrims? They were a Protestant movement in Great Britain to undermine the Church of England. And at that point, the church was still very strong. The Calvary movement, which is, your Episcopalians, your Presbyterians, it was the United States, the formation of the United States, that these Protestant churches got their impetus. Right. Many of them they were very small, and over in Europe, but here they were able to get a big truck going by, or a big mobile home.
I can still hear you.
So, so they in the United States they were able to get a foothold, and they needed a stronghold position. That's why the United States has always been about piracy. It was to establish this. The founding fathers, George Washington, are looking proudly down upon what the United States has become. Because it was Thomas Paine who prevented that from happening in the first place. Because Thomas Paine, there are some who claim that he's actually the original author, not Thomas Jefferson, of the Declaration of Independence.
Okay.
And because it was his pamphleteering and his writing that motivated and got many of the, the quote-unquote settlers to actually go to war in the Revolution. But for don't do it for the reason that is being promoted. Do it for this reason. Do it for self-governance. You don't need you don't need you don't need a monarchy. We don't need a king ordained by God to rule over us. That the aristocrats are no different. They're not or any more special than you are.
But couldn't that be used? Couldn't that statement, that
sure.
perspective be used to get people? Now, I'm not saying Thomas Paine was a good guy or a bad guy, but I just seeing that they're all related, and I want to believe that this guy meant what he was saying, but at the same time,
I believe he was a good guy because of what happened to him after the fact. That he went over, they couldn't dispatch him here within the colonies. All right. So they sent him to France, and in France he was arrested, and most of the rest of his life was spent in jail. So they got him out of the country and then basically squirreled him away someplace, and and ruined his life. That's not what they usually do to people that are within.
Who was it that exported him?
I think Jefferson was not Jefferson. It was it might have been Washington that dispatched him over there. Could have been Washington.
That makes sense.
Remember, Washington made a deal with Jewish bankers to finance the revolution, and part of the deal is that we would always be in debt and in servitude of the Jews. Forever. That the debt would never be repaid, in essence, from our forever allegiance to the Jewish state, whenever that comes. And this is why the United States is so supportive of Israel. But all we have to do is declare it as, we have honored the agreement and apply a moral code to it to break that code. It could be done. Back then, they had to behave themselves a lot more than they do today. Today, we could simply say, you've dishonored us, and therefore, we're no longer going to defend you. But yeah, this country was formed as a pirate cove in order to create a countering system that would eventually, in turn, be able to do the things that the British Crown itself could not do because they were under the control of, basically through Rome and the Catholic Church and the Church of England. And it was a way of subverting it. And now that subversion is pretty much complete, and the Catholic Church is a shell of what it was, pretty much its influence and power has been neutered to just about nothing now. That the world is coming apart at the seams. The moral code that kept the world together is now. This is why it's the weakness of the Catholic Church that is the reason you saw that news story, whatever you told me about before, about the gay couple, and how they frame it. See, in the days when the Catholic Church controlled everything, we're also taught. I'll give you another example. We're taught something that it makes perfect sense to me now, but the Catholic Church was the first organization that said to employers that in the world of finance that, look, your employees, you must have a good system of distribution of labor. It is not a stakeholder or a shareholder within a company that makes the company successful. It's the very people that are working within the organization. So it's incumbent. Right. It is moral for a business owner to share the wealth with their employees. Now, where are we today? We're at the total opposite part of that spectrum. Everything today is about paying employees the least amount. This philosophy is what rose. This predominantly Catholic philosophy, okay? It became prominent amongst all Catholics. That if you were Catholic, this is what you did. You shared in the bounty with the people who helped you achieve your success. Germany, this is what built up the Germany manufacturing machine in the late 1800s, and it led to World War I. That the British Crown, the British Empire, could no longer compete on a manufacturing basis with Germany. And so Germany had to be destroyed. The remnants of that still existed through World War II, when it was completely decimated, right? But then what happened? They had to turn their ire to the next Catholic stronghold in manufacturing stronghold in the world, and that was the Midwest of the United States. The most powerful manufacturing base, which by the end of World War II, obviously the most powerful manufacturing region in the entire world. It led to the roaring 1950s. And what held it together was not the unions. It was the Catholic Church that started that began the philosophy of equal distribution of labor. You look even at Henry Ford. Henry Ford understood this and believed in paying his employees more so they could buy Ford products and trucks and cars. And he knew that if he shares the success of Ford Motor Company with its employees, that his employees are going to be some of his best customers. And they're going to be great customers for his competitors, too, and the city of Detroit as a whole. And it led to an enormous period of prosperity. Detroit was the jewel of all cities, predominantly because it was 90% Catholic. All right? So what's happened now? What they did is they brought in the unions, and the unions were brought in by, to not to help employees, but to substitute the Catholic Church with the third-party organization. The purpose is they had to break the power and the influence that the church had over the people and replace it with something else. Lure them into supporting this other group that'll do. Don't worry about the church; it's not their business. That's religion. We're a business organization. We're going to defend your right to earn a living wage. What are unions now? They're just organizations to steal money.
Mafia.
They're working totally in opposition of what their whole charter is all about. Their entire mission statement They do it a little bit so they can cover themselves legally, but really, unions. So the destruction of Midwest manufacturing was brought about by the adoption of the unions, and it's amazing how many people think that, wow, the unions have destroyed U.S. manufacturing. People think that they're, people building cars are getting paid too much money. And it's, wow, no understanding of economics, right? No understanding that it's, it's the main people in any corporation are the people who actually do the work. Those are the ones who should be sharing in the bounty. That's how you attract people, by the way, to innovation. And what are we doing today? We're doing just the opposite today. So I think we're stuck in a period where we're almost going into the dark ages. And I know that kind of sounds kind of funny with all the technology we have, but people think this technology is getting better and stronger. And is it getting better? I think they're just putting lipstick on a pig, if you ask me.
The evil aspect of it is getting stronger.
Right.
I mean, we hear stories, all these fantastical stories about them, reading the thoughts of a rat when they put this hat. I mean all these different things that you hear out of MIT or like places that they're going to do. But again, if there's a technology that they stumble upon or that they're working on, it's going to be usurped. It's going to be stolen, like Tesla's information, and it's going to be used for, unless it gets in the right, it's going to get in the wrong hands because all the bad people have all the money mostly. Mm-hmm. So I don't really see that the tech. I mean, right now, the technology. I'm here, with a cell phone tethered to this MacBook on this platform, the Skype platforms, having a conversation with you with this other laptop here. All this technology, the video games, but it's like these are just toys to just keep us docile. The cars. Oh, you see that new car? Oh, you just see that new game console? I sit around people that are 20-something and 30-something all day long, and largely they talk about pop culture. This one guy, all he does is everything goes back to a video game. It goes back to just I don't know, man. It's an absolute.
Yeah, it's a clusterfuck.
I can't. I sit there and I think, and I'm like, oh my God, is it like? Is there any thought, any unique thought or idea in your head that wasn't put there by this fucking system? And just like everything, just everything that entertains them, everything that this one guy. And I use Amazon, but I know what it is. Mm-hmm. He uses Amazon, and he's like, "Oh, I love Amazon, man. I don't know what I would do without it. I don't know what I would do without this." And it's like people getting so dependent on technology is not a good thing, because again, this stuff, the real tech stuff, the real things that are being designed that can keep people alive, like the life extension technologies. These things are going to be for them, like Tesla. The people talking about, like this guy Drew walked up to me and he said, "What about what's that guy's name that's doing the rocket technology? What's his name? Elon Musk." He says, "Is Elon Musk one of these guys? Like the conspiracy? Because he, every now and then he likes."
Elon Musk is one of the aristocrats.
Oh,
he's bloodline aristocrat, because otherwise he would listen. Him and Bezos, which, by the way, Bezos. Yeah. Let's be real. They sit around. These are NGO companies, right? These are front men that they bring in, right? They want to start this company called Amazon, 25 years ago, they start this company called Amazon. Amazon has never made a profit or paid a dividend, not once. Right? So, and then we're going to, and as a business model, it's completely ridiculous. It's all based on a false valuation. And with the easy, with uber low interest rates, their ability to borrow money well below the rate of inflation, and then create a spread, and use that to put businesses and competitors and gobble up assets. It's everything. Amazon represents everything that we should be disdaining and basically throwing out. It is, the company makes no money, right?
And that's like, that blows me away. That explain how they don't make any money to go.
They don't make any money. They borrow money into existence and live off the valuation of their stock. And that's basically the quintessential thing. You've heard the term the wealth effect. You just make people feel good. So they have a direct line to the U.S. government and the Federal Reserve. And if they need to meet payroll, they borrow the money from the Fed. They just go to the New York Fed window and borrow the money. Right now they're at a point where they're too big to fail. They go and acquire all these other corporations to become the only way they can really grow is by sucking the resources of other companies that are profitable and try to absorb it into their corrupt fold. But in the end, they're a cancer cell on the business world. And the model itself. So eventually, here's what happens. Ignorance is bliss until it isn't. This is what I tell people when they talk about the technology, the Amazons of the world. Okay, you know that these companies are really, they're not doing what they say they're doing. And I'm not just talking about spying on people. They don't make any money. All right? So if we ever get to a point where we have to go to an honest money system, these technology companies, most of them are not going to survive. They can't. They really don't bring any value to the marketplace. Like, what value to the marketplace is something currently as it stands? What value to the marketplace is Facebook bringing? Unless you're trying to data mine and gather information to sell to corporate gurus, it really doesn't have any value anymore. Because they've taken the value away from it. But,
right.
And turned it into a commercial enterprise that people don't like. And it's clearly, I think everybody knows that there are spying rings. So,
right.
But, technology is wonderful, but also, too, I think they tell us a lot of things are happening with technology, and they like to embellish it a little bit. When I guess
because people think they're going to be part of it.
Yeah, my feeling, I guess, is that it's the more they overhaul the plumbing, the easier it is to stop up the drain, right? So you're gonna, the more they become dependent upon technology, the more they actually become vulnerable to being destroyed, because this technology is all dependent upon bits and pieces and moving information, which can be dismantled very easily, right?
Yeah.
Very easy. Everybody's talking about the 5G. With 5G would be really simple to dismantle. Just start blowing up cell towers. They can't defend all of them, and eventually you take the cell towers down, you take down the 5G system. So they want to go. They want us to go into this wireless technology world, flood us with RF. That's like, okay, be careful what you wish for, because now it's going to be easier to take your system down. And if it ain't us, maybe we will have a solar flare that causes an electromagnetic storm that wipes out all circuitry. What happens is that? What if you're a system and you're totally dependent on that? Don't you have a redundancy? Technology is not.
Sure they do. I'm sure they do.
I don't think so. I don't think so anymore. I think the redundancy system of old has been dismantled. The old copper wire systems and has all been replaced, and they're not using anymore. They're ripping up the old phone cables, replacing it with the latest technology. The wire systems are being replaced with wireless. So,
well,
I don't know.
What I said to my coworker was, I said, whatever Elon Musk is doing, whoever's funding him or whatever's going on there, and you're just getting updates, I said, make sure that you understand one thing. None of this is for you or me or anyone in this room. It's not for you. If it's not for us, it's for them. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me like he kind of understood, like a dog that kind of, cocks its head to the left or the right. And this isn't for us. Unless things change drastically, we are gonna have an incredible percentage of the population that is incapable of doing even, easy tasks. We're already seeing that. It's even like the simple tasks that John Rockefeller said. We don't need thinkers. We just need people that are going to do what we tell them to do
and operate the machines. Yes,
and operate the machines until the robots are finished, and then
Yeah, but here's the thing: right. They are. This is what makes the aristocracy so stupid. They think they can replace our monetary system with a system of credits, like with technocracy, right? Energy credits. The best laid plans of mice and men. All right, to give you an example, they think like they've created this meme that the oil industry is bad, so we need to go green with alternative energy. Let's say solar, batteries, Musk, right? With Tesla, all that stuff. This is the biggest, not the biggest, but it's probably one of the largest frauds ever perpetuated against mankind. Is people are completely blind to the fact that the amount of energy it takes to create these alternative energy systems from oil exceeds the BTUs that are ever created by these technologies themselves. To explain that, you're going to burn more energy from oil to build a Tesla battery than a Tesla battery is ever going to deliver to its owner. So then why do you need a Tesla battery? Why don't you just use oil? If you have to burn the oil to mine the rare earths, to create the material, to manufacture, ship, and install, and you got to use oil at every stage of that process, and you calculate all that energy that's being used just so that you can have a Tesla battery, and you say, wow, this Tesla battery is going to give me 20 years of service. Well, the amount of BTUs to get that Tesla battery in your house from oil exceeds what that battery is going to produce. So what the fuck did you just do?
Yeah, right.
Right? You haven't solved anything. And no matter what, you can't get around it. And why we're going down this, cars have to be battery powered. We really are naive and stupid as fucking hell.
It makes sense in that realm of exhaust the system, using all this energy, using 10 times, the factor energy at 10 to create something that's only going to get, once it's done, it's going to produce only 3 times that 3 out of that 10. It just
you just shifted everything around and created busy work for people because you're not creating anything of value.
Anything sustainable.
Right? It's not sustainable because it's nothing of value. It doesn't have any real merit or value. Like, I'm not against solar energy. I'm not against alternative energy. But I'm just like, look at it realistically. And what are we doing in terms like with Musk? Because we're talking about Elon Musk. This guy is one of the biggest con men, one of the most evil perpetuators of fraud ever to walk the face of this earth. Him, Warren Buffett, and their ilk are evil, evil men. And people don't know it. They think of them as heroes. They're totally perpetuating fraud and deceit against people. You know, their entire modus operandi is about piracy, and they're doing it the old-fashioned way. They're stealing it, and they're doing it right under their nose, and they're doing it in your name, and they're making you smile about it. Same thing with Bezos with Amazon. The destruction of entrepreneurship, the destruction of anyone's ability to create their own jobs, that they're now going to work for mother company. 1984. Keep on shopping at Walmart, everybody. You go to a restaurant, when's the last time you've been to a restaurant where the owner was actually sitting in that restaurant, or not some office building where your restaurant you go to isn't part of a big mega corporation? Is it any wonder the food gets corrupted when we've surrendered our power over to these entities and organizations? We're told that an economy, a local economy, is growing when, you know, they're building strip malls, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, businesses are opening in this community. This is a really growing, thriving area. When you look at the businesses that are open, they're all franchise businesses, which means that franchise businesses, corporations, don't keep the money within that community. They suck the money out. They act as vacuum cleaners. The only money they put back into a local community is the wages and the salaries they pay to the workers. And most of these are service sector jobs, so that ain't very much. Okay? Every time you go into a Walmart and you plop down your credit card or debit card or cash to buy an item, that money is being sucked over to Arkansas and then to the Cayman Islands. The only money the only help that Walmart gives to an area is the wages they pay their employees. Whoop-de-frickin' do. Most of them are just above broke, you know? And with the high cost of, you know, keeping a roof over your head now, I mean, we're in serious trouble here. We're at the beyond that point, and that the pressure that the system keeps bringing down upon us. And getting back to Musk, what I wanted to say about him and others like him is that, you know, these guys are put mainly in front to deceive people. Let's do this make-work thing. Money is flowing right to the oil companies. And if you've heard Clint, you know that through the Kafirs, it's the government that owns all these companies. It's all a scam. We're being scammed on such a high level that, and if we don't stop it, if we don't put a stop to the Elon Musks of the world, I mean, we're not going to make it another generation, another 20 years. No freaking way. How can we?
I think that's the goal. I think that's the goal.
But you got to realize their goal is not to destroy the system. They are, when the system goes,
just to destroy the people.
But the people is the system. See, they can't replace the Elon Musks of the world would love to replace, and the Bezos of the world would love to replace workers with robots, because on the balance sheet they go, oh wow, we can cut our expenses. We don't have to do equal distribution of labor. We can continue to suck up resources and play our scam. But do you see that they're a parasite, a virus on the system?
Yeah.
So if you destroy the people itself, then you cannot borrow. You can't have this system of borrowing against future productivity. So what do you replace it with? Okay? Mm-hmm. And then if you're going to replace it, you have to realize that there are certain people that are going to lose from a changeover, and there are going to be winners or better term is there are going to be winners and losers in that transition. Who's going to win and who's going to lose? Do you think the losers are going to take it lying down? No. Okay? They're going to be pretty darn upset about being on the losing end of that proposition. So you have to coordinate all of that with all of these people and predetermine, oh, this person is going to lose, this person is going to gain. They don't want to lose their seat at the table. So the infighting up on high, and this is the way it's always been. There's no perfect system. There are probably more people that want to preserve the system as it stands now, because it's through this that they've been able to gain the power that they have, that they've been able to reach the level within the aristocracy they've reached the position of lords and knights and all that stuff within the undercurrent that drives or that controls the aristocracy. I think the aristocracy all around the world is interconnected. It's the commoners who don't know, but
sure,
they're all part of a club. I mean, and they all know each other, and they hang out with each other, and they have fun, and do cocaine and bang whores, hookers and whores together. But they're in competition with each other, but it's all like a friendly thing. And they throw the commoners on the board like a chessboard, and it's all just it's all shits and giggles to them. Yeah. But they still got to look at it as I want my children, my posterity. See, they understand what real wealth is. They understand that what a bloodline is. So they're out to maintain their responsibility is to maintain and gain as much control over their adversaries while they're on this earth, and pass that down to their children and teach them to do the same and keep it going. And how many of those people are going to want to lose out?
Right.
And maybe I'm wrong about all that, but I think that's the reason why we haven't had a rapid change over to this point, because too many people are going to get hurt, and they don't want to. So you got to convince them, or we're going to bring in like a Bezos, right? Who's going to change the structure of business and distribution. He's going to eliminate the cost of labor. But then on the other side, they're not thinking, well, if they do that, then we have to give all the commoners guaranteed income, don't we? And if we have to give them guaranteed income, then that's completely inflationary. Then we can't run our bond market scams. Our finance, what about the Buttonwood Tree Agreement? What about all the members of the New York Stock Exchange Company that sit on the board? The members, the families that have been on the board since the Buttonwood Tree Agreement in 1793. What are you going to do about that? Because now you're going to just basically take the entire system and the wealth of the world through this finance system, and you're going to throw it on its head. And you're going to make it so that maybe only 10% or 20% of the current participants are going to survive. I think you're going to make a lot of enemies that way.
Yeah.
So they need to fix the current system, get it back on right again, so that they could start lending money to people again. That's what they're thinking about. That's what they're saying. If we don't get people back to, borrowing again, we go through all these cycles of ups and downs. And they tried it recently with, after 2008, 2009, with juicing the market through the Fed's acquisition of non-performing assets, the collateralized debt obligations, the collateralized mortgage obligations, and then reinflating the asset bubble called real estate, and doing it in such a way where now it's even worse than it was in 2008. When the real estate market comes down again, wow. I mean,
it's going to be worse than before.
It's going to be 10 times worse than before. It has to be, because there's no central bank that could come and buy up all the toxic assets again. And it's just, you're going to have oversupply like through the roof. Prices are going to collapse. And then once it's the real estate market, or I should say the mortgage industry, it keeps the whole system afloat. If 30% of homeowners stop paying their mortgage, the banking system would completely collapse in the United States and around the world. It would fall. It's that simple. That's why I tell people the most powerful thing is that they fear is people becoming Christ-like and just simply saying no.
Yeah.
And doing like the 40-day fast, which is an allegory for Christ got his people basically to say, no, I'm not going to feed your corruption. I'm going to go on a fast. And for 40 days there was no productivity. And so they came to him and said, get your people back to work, please. We'll give you everything you want.
Right. Yeah.
And the reality was that, and they had to capitulate to him. That's the power that we have as commoners over the aristocracy. And so everything they do is to keep us from finding out that truth, right? That simple, easy solution to all of our problems. Stop participating in their game. Just pull out. Don't go to Walmart, all right? Don't feed the system. Don't pay your cable bill. Don't pay your mortgage. Don't pay your cell phone bill, electric bill. You imagine if 30% of the people in the country just in 1 month just stopped doing that. Wow. Within 10 days, they would be giving us what we want. They would say, okay, whatever, we'll get rid of all the technology, we'll get rid of bozos, we'll do whatever you want, you know? Because the whole system of accounts and measures what's left of account and measures would come collapsing down within 10 days.
Right. And then they'd have to make a new deal.
They would. So we have all of the power. It's actually not a top-down system. It's a bottom-up system. Their job is not to make us smart. Their job is to keep us as dumb as possible. And boy, they've mastered that. They know how to use our own shortcomings against us, and they do so brilliantly.
Mm-hmm.
So they hide it in plain sight. And I guess that's the big joke.
That is. Yeah.
Put it right in front of our face. Like all the problems of the world, all the problems of what we talked about. I guess the theme of our little show here today is the theme of morality versus immorality. The moral code has always been there, but everything that's happened since, well, if we're talking about the United States, everything since the Pilgrims arrived here has been about breaking that code and replacing it with unbound immorality and celebrating the fact.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as earlier, like when I said, you can try to put a system together that does the right thing, but there's the battle of good and evil is going to, all you need is a weak link in the chain and someone who wishes to exploit it. And then you have, it might not happen overnight, but
yeah, it happens. It always happens. It's just the way it is. The original, it goes back to original sin. Remember, it was the story of Eve and Lilith, right?
Yeah.
That when God created the mind of man, when he created the mind of woman, it's the opposite. And so women's nature is one built upon, because they're emotional creatures, they're easily deceived. So the serpent deceived Eve and exploited her weakness, and then the serpent didn't try to deceive Adam. The serpent used Eve to deceive Adam. Because the nature of Adam was to protect Eve. And once she had fallen, he fell on the sword too. So the original sin of women is to be deceptive, and the original sin of men is to protect their deception. And it's the one problem that has plagued mankind since day one and is never going to go away. It's the root of all of our problems to this very day. Just our lack.
Darn it.
Every problem stems from it. Every one. Yeah. And it's there that when you could take that, and that's what made me realize that I was completely wrong about the Catholic Church. Because the only organization that understood that and said, we need first to control the minds and the emotion of women, the nature of women is the most destructive force, and it leads to the destruction of all civilizations. It always does, it always has. And then men will do their bidding in its destruction because they can't tell the difference. Because they're out to protect the female. The white knight, the simps. Right? So, yeah. And then once they figure it out, and once they figure it, this is just nature. This isn't like, it just is what it is. It's because women have twice as much white matter in their brains as men do, and men have twice as much gray matter. And gray matter is basically derives your your creativity, your intellect, okay, is driven through gray matter. White matter is stimulus. You know, white matter is that's why women seek validation. They crave it. That's what makes social media so popular amongst women, because they can behave really badly and put bad pictures of themselves on Instagram or Twitter and get thousands of thirsty loser men saying, "Oh, you're so beautiful. I love you. Oh, I like you." These women actually get a charge. That's like putting electricity in their batteries. They're deriving their self-worth from this, and it's also another reason why so many relationships can't. It's almost impossible today. Do you know that the amount of women cheating on their boyfriends and husbands today has reached the level of unprecedented proportions? Like 90% of all women cheat.
Really?
Yeah. 80% of all marriages, divorces are initiated by women. Number one cause, I'm not happy. Why? Because we have a family court system that hands these women, the state hands these women a loaded 6-gun. Right? Now the Russian roulette, you only have one gun bullet in the chamber. It's a fully cocked and loaded gun. And at any given moment, they can pull the trigger and blow your brains out. So you have one half of the population with their boots on the throats of the other half of the population. And what do you think is going to happen? Right?
Bad things, man.
Bad things happen. Now, if you even, amongst young people, a lot of these millennials, if you don't accept a woman's advances, she'll accuse you of, sexual assault, sexual battery, and the police will show up. And if you don't have the money to hire a very expensive attorney, or you don't have something that proves your innocence in one way or another, yeah, you're going to go down you're either going to get locked up, charged, and put in prison, or you're going to be registered as a sex offender, which is going to completely destroy your life.
Well, Roger Daltrey denounced the Me Too movement. Good old Roger Dalt.
The Me Too movement is a cancer on the whole system. It's destroying women.
That's what I think he was alluding to.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're not. Look, it's just we're reaching that point in our society or civilization where, since they neutered the Catholic Church, and now they've released the hounds and the nature. This is what's happened to all civilizations before. Once the code of conduct was removed, the moral code was removed from women. It only takes women a generation or two before they bring the civilization down. And this is how they do it. They do it by demanding they be allowed to behave immorally until they start to demand to be treated under a moral code. And isn't that what Me Too is? Many young women who threw themselves at rich, powerful men who didn't get anything but, maybe an hour of sex or maybe less. And now
that were Weinsteined.
Right.
Weinsteined and dined.
Weinstein and dine. And then it felt they didn't get they didn't get what they thought they deserved out of the deal. They basically hoarded themselves, prostituted themselves, and now are demanding to be treated under a moral code. So you behaved immorally.
Got like 30 seconds left.
Oh. You behaved very immorally, but now you want to be treated morally? And that's Me Too in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's kind of the childish mindset. We're all, both genders are guilty of it. But thanks for joining in today. Greg, stand on line.
One holistic system of systems.
I will MK Ultra ya. Put the MK scope on ya. If the MK hits you, it's guaranteed to open ya. The 57mm Mark 110. 220 rounds a minute, try to stop them. Don't put that on your wish list, that's retarded babble. Protesters make the hit list soon as they start to rabble. They are nothing but fishes in the barrel. It doesn't have to be Christmas for a carol. Some decorate with ornamental decorum. Some perform Shakana on Hanukkah and Purim. That's where my job come in. I am a blessing to the mercenary for the corporation selling weapons to them. Any potential competitor step into them. I'm authorized to knock them out and stick a GPS into them. They want to sell uranium to Iran that's enriched. That's a bitch. Now we